Okay, we're live. Numbers are clicking, the red light's on. Okay. Welcome. My name is Verde Arbusto. This is the Schumann Resonance Harmonics channel on YouTube and Facebook. Thank you for being here. If you're new, welcome. Please remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And if it would not be too much of a difficulty for you, please hit the notification bell and select all, or you are likely to get none of the notifications. Just simply as an observation for you. And as a good recommendation for you, it's a important to become involved in a channel as much as you can. So when I say to comment, share, subscribe, all that, it's important to get the notifications for the channels that you really like. All right. So that's a public service announcement. All right, so this is the next successive video in the series that's dedicated to Freidemann Freund, who is a researcher who works for NASA, and among other places. He has a lot of publications out. I have a lot of respect for him because he's done a good deal of research that's relevant to atmospheric electromagnetics, and that's the purpose of this series, to introduce his research to you. I've already done a video a year ago, approximately a year ago, on an interesting subject, rocks that sparkle and crackle and glow. And that was fascinating. And so now here it is a year later, and I'm doing a big presentation of his work. And I think that he's done so much work that's relevant that it's important to do a good series of a number of videos that at least introduce you to his work. And so that's what where I'm at right now. That's what this video is. I'm numbering them loosely, as you know, I've explained this already. As I've been doing this and doing research, I've been having to kind of move things around and everything. So whereas this would have been like the second video, it originally would have been the second, it's now like the fourth in the series. So this is part 1D. And this is the one where I'm going to be talking about EARTHSCOPE, which is not my favorite. I don't know that much about the EARTHSCOPE measuring protocol. But then the next one that we're going to do is current current and surface potential induced by stress activated positive holes in igneous rocks. And for me, that's, I think, a little bit more exciting because it's a little bit closer on track of where I have been talking already in this subject matter. The EARTHSCOPE is it's going to be new to me. It'll probably be new to you. I've already read the article, and I got lost in it, to tell you the truth. That's why it's not really a lot of fun for me. But you know, it's still learning, and it's still important to bring it out. It's still important to introduce it to you, even though it's, you know, whatever to me. Doesn't matter. I still got to bring it out. That's what my guides told me. You know, this I want this series to be not a complete and total exhaustive clearinghouse, but I want this series to be a lot of really solid research by this gentleman and me discussing it. Some of the stuff doesn't need to be discussed, but I want to, you know, kind of talk uh, at length about, you know, what's going on with this and how it relates to either the Schumann resonances or the atmospheric electromagnetics, and what's going on, and especially with when you hear Dutch and the earthquake people. There's three of them, four actually that I can think of. Although I don't think Ricky has a channel on earthquake prediction and any of that, but she's certainly in the mix somewhere. So when we're talking about, you know, the channels, the content providers that do video content on earthquakes, precursors there too, that do how to read the meters, like these things, the seismic. Mary Greeley, she's another one that talks about earthquakes. So they don't all talk about the same thing, but they do. They're related. They're interrelated. So again, I want this research to kind of dovetail into what they're talking about, and to be able for people to understand the mechanism of how energy transfers, across the plate, as Dutch says. And so what causes that, why and wherefore, and what's the research? All right. So I think what I'm going to do right now, I'll play some music and then kind of give you a chance to kind of ease into this early. I have let's see, what it was. I want to kind of get the preface out of the way, whatever the introductory remarks, play the music, and then just get right into the material. I've already explained who he is, why this guy's important. This gentleman, doctor, I think he's a doctor, I'm not sure. I've explained what the image, this image here is. I've been using it a number of times because I really like it. I think it's really cool. Hopefully I haven't burned it out. I explained that I've already explained that I'm the deep dive into these topics, and it can take me weeks, a few months or whatever, or longer, to research a topic. So this is one I started on the 12th, and so I'm still going into this, and this is going to be probably another week in the making of getting all these videos done. This is there's a lot of research here, and I want to cover this, not all of it. I can't cover all of it, but a lot of the really important, relevant information. All right, so I think that kind of explains everything up to this point. This is more this is more of what I've been already kind of talking about with Freidemann Freund. So the EARTHSCOPE is going to be new to read about, new for us. But the other one, the stress activated positive holes, are more of what I've already talked about and how that relates to earthquake prediction. All right, so let's get some music. Let's see what we got here. All right, so I got music, and I'm going to pause this. We'll just say cigarette length break long enough. So with that cheery note,
Okay, we're back. Bring it on home. Thank you for being here. All right. Okay, we're live. All right, so let's get into the material. The title of this is Ground Atmosphere hyphen ionosphere interactions related to earthquakes. How can EARTHSCOPE help? All right. And the authors are Dimitar Uzunov, I butchered that name, and our the hero of our narrative, Freidemann Freund. Um, okay, and so he's representing Uzunov is representing NASA, and Freidemann Freund is representing San Jose State University, Department of Physics. You know, maybe I wonder if I went out there to San Jose, California. Never mind. Anyway, all right. So, let's just read what it says here. Oh, all right, hold on. Recent EARTHSCOPE activities have been concerned with monitoring earthquake-related parameters from using surface stress, and the acronym is INSAR, to deep borehole stress measurements. The acronym is SAFOD. In this paper, we draw attention to other parameters possibly related to earthquakes, EQ, that can be monitored from the ground and from space. Specifically, we propose to initiate a similar activity under Terrascope or under some other future mission concept. Recent field studies and simultaneous, oh, hello, are you going to help me here? Will you just help me? Come on. All right, there we go. Recent field studies and simultaneous satellite observations add confidence to reported observations of electromagnetic EM emissions before large earthquakes. There is likewise mounting evidence that, prior to seismic activity, electric fields are transmitted from the ground into the atmosphere, that thermal anomalies may become observable, that ions may be emitted from the ground, that the atmospheric conductivity is affected, that the ground potential may change locally or regionally, etc. Some authors have considered the possibility of an inverse connection from the atmosphere to the ground, causing seismic activity. Increased lightning activity due to growing seismic activity and the large currents thus induced may have an effect on the in parentheses fraction. Oh, maybe it is in parentheses. Sorry, may have an effect on the fracturing or microfracturing of rocks, focusing the EQ energy release, and the reference is Pulinets 2000. Several ongoing international satellite missions, Compass, C1PASS, out of Russia and Poland, 2001, and Demeter, which is a joint of France, Japan, Russia, 2002, and Variant, VARIANT, which is from the European Space Agency, Ukraine, 2001, are aimed at retrieving ionospheric plasma anomalies that may be related to EQ activity magnitude greater than 4. I'm sorry, greater than 5. Sorry. And the little arrow going that way is greater than, and the one going that way is the other way is less than. All right. So they're talking about a wide variety of side effects from seismic activity. And they're talking about
what specifically relating to us, atmospheric conductivity is affected, that the ground potential may change locally or regionally. All right. So what they're talking about, what's important to remember with this, when they talk about the ground potential, is that I've mentioned this before. It's important to remember that voltage is based off of a zero ground potential. Earth ground has to be, in fact, de facto, it has to be a 0 volts. It's what you would consider, it's the ground. It is the return. These are electrical terms. And when you're doing electrical wiring, there is the return, right? Your house the house wiring has two grounding circuits. One is its ground, the box and the wiring is ground to itself internally, and then that is ground to the box. All right. It's, if you have an old house, it's different. And some of the new ones, it might be a little different, but traditionally how it's been for, for years, for numbers of years, has been that when they put the code in, and I think it was like 1940 something, 50s, I think in the 50s, they had started, late 40s, when they had wiring in the house, they had started the two circuit. One is the neutral and one is the ground. The neutral is the return. That's generally the white one. No, I'm sorry. White one is the hot. So the black one, when you have red, red, where the fuck is it? When you have white and black wires, white, black, and green, okay, 3-conductor in your house. White is the hot lead, black is the neutral, and green is the ground. The neutral is the return that grounds it to the box. The box is itself ground into the ground. And there's a grounding rod that's copper, or it's zinc and copper, depending on, it's supposed to, the best ones are pure copper all the way through, but again, it could be zinc and copper, whatever. They're usually 6 feet, could be 8. In some cases, they have an 8-foot grounding rod, and they're heavy. They're all copper. So one of the things at the electric supply house that we used to sell is grounding rods. So the house itself is ground into the ground. Okay. The box of the electric circuit is ground into the ground. But the third plug of your house, that gets sent right to the ground itself. Right? So the ground wire is right, that goes right directly to the outside ground. Whereas the black, the neutral, gets returned into the circuit, the internal circuit in the house, which is eventually ground into the box, your service, with all the circuit breakers and all of that. The main box, the main service box for your house electric. Circuit panel, it's also called. So when we talk about ground potential, everything that's grounded into the ground, the earth, everything that is ground into the earth has to be at a 0. That's your return into the earth. So if the ground itself, which is supposed to be a 0, acts up with, as you saw it here, ions that may be emitted from the ground, that the atmospheric conductivity is affected, that the ground potential may change locally or regionally, okay? Consider the possibility of an inverse connection from the atmosphere to the ground, causing seismic, oh my God. I'm just pointing out here where it's talked about electric fields, right there, transmitted from the ground into the atmosphere. All right, so you're getting the idea of what I'm talking about here. That when these earthquake anomalies, seismic activity, send a shock, send a current through the peroxy bonding, through through the ground, it sends a surplus of electrons to the ground. That zero, what was a zero ground potential, is now no longer a zero. It's now a +5 or something, or +2 or something, whatever. It may not be a lot, or it may be a lot, maybe a lot, depending. If you're over there where they're getting earthquakes, you can see on Kumiania that they've had some bursts that are 12,000 hertz into the atmosphere. That's not Schumann resonance. That's what we're talking about here, the peroxy bonding. Um, and that's a different circuit. That's a different thing. And that's part of the earthquake, prediction circuit that's important for you to understand, especially when you're reading the Kumiania graphs, when you see a huge spike there, to know that that's, that where that's coming from and what that's, what that's based in. And likewise, that when you see that, likewise, again, with the ground potential, we're talking about the ground potential changing from a zero, an auspicious, a nominal, which means in name only, or it's not actually zero, but it's a nominal. They consider it a zero because it stays stable enough that it can be a zero, or theoretically, or so they factor it out into the equation to make it a zero, um, zero volts as the ground, the internal ground to the system of the electronics. So when the potential changes and it adds voltage where it should be a zero, should be a zero or a negative, it changes to a positive, and you now have a flow going the other way where they shouldn't be. It messes up the number one, it messes up what is plugged into the circuit, but it messes up the electronics and it sends things going the wrong way. And a lot of the circuits have diodes that act as traffic, traffic regulators, traffic cops, and the diodes will act as a like a valve, let stuff go one way but not the other way. And so what'll happen is the diodes blow out because it's not supposed to have plus charge going in the other way. It's like a brute force just knocked through the gates, the main, a gate that's there to keep out electricity that's usually not coming that way, but it does. It blasts it with a strong voltage. You can understand it would have it. A lot of these transformers and stuff blow up, and other components malfunction because the changing ground potential. And it's really important to understand, it's not just that, that it releases, oxygen and peroxy bonding as an excess of electrons. It's like, well, that excess of electrons, the last thing that I had read, it talks about stays at the surface and it conducts along the surface. So that fault, the fault line, the fault that breaks, it conducts up to the fault and then it conducts on the surface until it, until it can't perpetuate anymore, and then it releases out. Right. So, or maybe until it's weak enough that way that it perpetuates out that way. And that's where you get the charge. So the excess of electrons in the atmosphere, those are perpetuating out into the ground first before they're, right. That's what that is. The ground potential before the oxygen, the peroxy bonds are released out into the atmosphere. All right. So the order that it goes is the ground potential changes first before the peroxy bonding. Right. Just simply put. All right. All right. So I think I explained all that and why this is relevant, and I just want to go through this one quickly. All right. A recent experimental study. A recent experimental study
Freund 2000 has indicated a direct connection between stress applied to rocks and the generation of charge carriers. Oh, it keeps doing what I don't want it to do. I'm just going to kind of work with this the best I can. This is fun and sort of not at the same time. I'm going to read it again. A recent experimental study from 2000 has indicated a direct connection between stress applied to rocks and the generation of charge carriers, which are the positive holes, causing electric currents and affecting surface potentials. These new results may intensify the interest in future similar studies. And again, surface potentials is especially relevant around grounding rods or those things that are used to ground the power, the artificial power infrastructure of society. Right? So when Dutch is talking about earthquake activity around high power lines, bing, 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 right there, right there. It just says it right there. Right? Are are you with me? Are you following with me? Okay. If you don't know who Dutch is, his other name is Dutch Sense on YouTube. He does earthquakes and he talks about this. He's noted this. He's shown you he does similar thing to what I do with the different thing that I do. And so he's talking this right here, right here. He, the earthquake guy. This is what this is it. This is what is proving what he has said right here. This is the science that's behind this, right? These new results may intensify the interest in some future subjects. All right, so the experimental study indicated a direct connection between stress applied to the rocks and the generation of charge carriers, causing electric currents and affecting surface potentials. Right there, bam, right there. Okay. And I could stop this, play music for 5 minutes, and just let you groove on that whole, groovy vibe of where I'm, what I'm putting down here for you. That it is proven and provable. Those, the metal towers that carry those power lines, right? They're theoretically insulated against the power lines, but they're a grounding. They're not just they're grounds. That's what helps regulate the high tension power lines that are out there that go miles and miles. Are those metal structures that are dug into the ground that are holding up those wires. There's usually three of them, two and then one, you know, and that carry a high voltage, very high voltage, and underneath those, I mean, oh good golly, if they're showing you a connection between the ionosphere and the Earth ground here, the high power lines, high voltage lines that are only, a couple 100 feet off of the ground that are that are attached to, there's insulating, there's insulating, sleeves, right? Insulators that are made of ceramic. Yet we know piezoelectrics can, earthquake movement can, discharge an electric current through through crystals, and so there's more to this than just, oh, they're power lines and they're not doing anything. They're not anything to worry about. I think if that may be the best way to put it, that encapsulates what I'm saying. It may be general enough, but yet specific to cast the meaning. And if that's too vague for you, let me know. I'll spell it out in comments for you. So,
right here. This is what, this is directly related to what Dutch is saying. And if anyone has Dutch's ear, you can point them over to, where is it? 3606. I think I had said this, that this is exactly the scientific basis that explains the theories that he has, that he has had, uh, connecting earthquake, seismic to the power lines, overhead power lines. Yeah. Observable changes. So this is one, observable changes on the surface of the solid Earth. Observable changes on the surface of the solid Earth. Positive holes. She talks about positive holes. All right. All right. Electrical phenomena. All right. This is good reading right here. Electrical phenomena preceding large earthquakes have been mentioned or described in the literature for centuries. What has been lacking, however, was a fundamental understanding of the nature of the electric charges in rocks and how they may be generated in the crust. Okay? Alrighty. The keyword, yeah, okay, all right. And so, yeah, there's folk tales. People, we know stuff happens around earthquakes. The animals act weird. There's lights, swamp gas, whatever. There's all kinds of stuff. But the eggheads, as Dutch calls them, and I agree, that sit in an office somewhere in academia, that don't get out, that don't do any field research. These are the ones that write the papers and run the grant funding and blah blah blah. So those of us, it's kind of like, I'll put it this way. I'm not a scientist. People, I appreciate being told that I'm a scientist and you're a like, that's great. Thank you. I appreciate it, but I'm not a scientist. Okay? I'm a technician. Right? I figure out how stuff works and maybe take it apart. I probably take it apart and hopefully to improve it and put it back together. Hopefully better than I found it, but if I can at least get it to where it works properly without being improved, then that's a mission accomplished. But I'm not a scientist, okay? I just have a technical understanding, but I don't have the luxury of being farsighted or blind, half blind to what doesn't neatly fit within my model or my constraints. I don't get the luxury to be, you know, to be a selective viewer. I have to look at everything, what's working and what's not working. That's kind of what the tech does. If you've ever been to a store that sells, like an automotive shop, and you have a technician that comes out and tells you about your car, this is working, that's working, this isn't working, not the salesman, but the technician, the actual person that's working on the car. They don't try and sell you something that you can't use, or the technicians aren't the one, usually, and this is my experience, the technicians aren't the ones that are trying to sell you crap because they don't want to have to fix the problem later on. All right? Who's trying to sell you the thing at the fix-it shop? The salesman or the technician? The technicians aren't salesmen. They tell you this is working, this is good, this isn't working. I measured at this and that, and that's what their job is. That's what their gig is. Technicians tell you how stuff works and how to make it up, how to get the thing to operate in the optimal fashion. How to improve it so it operates optimally. So at least myself as a technician, that's kind of what the thing is here. All right. So that's the difference between the technician and the scientist, that I'm not a scientist. I don't work in a laboratory. I work out in the field. And I see and I talk with people, and I know through, having talked with people, that, we all know certain things that may not be objectively verifiable because they're not taking place in a lab, or they're not, without, certain constraints or whatever. Um, and so it can be tough to have this kind of anecdotal evidence and not have it received respectfully by the scientists. Right? And so, this is part of the problem where they say trust the science. Oh, the scientists don't trust us. Right? I'm not a scientist. I'm a technician. And I appreciate being called a scientist, but truth be told, I'm not a scientist. So whatever you say about science and blah blah blah, it's like, well, I agree with a lot of it, but there's also science isn't a thing. Science is a process. Science is it's the scientific method. So science is not a industry. I just want to make sure this is understood, that in the case of science is not an industry. Science is a way of getting knowledge and getting understanding. Okay. The fact that there is grant money, the fact that people make careers at it, the fact that there are career scientists, career researchers who don't go out in the field, I I humbly will submit that that may be the same thing as um oh, what's a good analogy? It may be the same thing as a priest who's celibate, who tries to give you marriage advice, or a driving instructor who doesn't actually go out on the road with you, but does it through walkie-talkie or something, or a swimming instructor who's never swam, or one of these, something like that. There's this kind of element, what I will call the densities, the density of life. There's a certain amount of living that's missing from that doesn't get respected, that doesn't get, observed, that doesn't get taken into consideration, yet we all know it and we all are bound and subject to it. Right? So there is the respect of science as a process, and yet science as an industry is different. That should not be respected. Right? Trust science, that should not be trusted. Any science that is hovering around something for sale, or a medical procedure for you to inject yourself to so you can be, accepted, that is not science that's trustworthy. It is not science that is worth standing, that has any standing, that should be stood upon. You want us to trust the science, then you need to be trustable. Scientists, if you got a injection that you're trying to foist upon us, then the science is not credible and it is not trustworthy. Right? Well, let's go on and on about all these, top scientists, oh, trust the science. Well, let's get all of the science into this, and then we can have this discussion on what's trustworthy. But when you stand in the way of the other science that you disagree with, we have to wonder if maybe there's not a political agenda that's with the science we should be trusting, which I'm not. Why? Because my guides tell me otherwise. Why? Because I've paid attention to history. And why? Because I'm old enough to know how these beings in power work. On that cheery note, the key word is water. Well, the key word's power, but here in our research, not just about them having power, but you having none.
The key word is water, not liquid water that fills the pores in rocks, but small amounts of H2O that dissolve in minerals, even those that are normally anhydrous when they crystallize in H2O-laden magmas or recrystallize in H2O-laden metamorphic environments. It is widely, but wrongly, thought that the dissolution of H2O ends with the formation of hydroxyl, which is OH. Instead, it has been noted early that hydroxyl pairs adjacent to cation, C-A-T-I-O-N, cation, vacancies undergo an electron transfer inside the mineral matrix by which two oxygens become oxidized from the usual 2 hyphen to the hyphen 1 or -1 oxidation state, while 2 protons, which is H positive, become reduced to molecular H2. And that's according to Martens in 1976. The O negative, thus generated, undergo spin pairing to form peroxy bonds or peroxy links. And I've shown you this before, the O3 Si-OO pair, the peroxy dash SiO3. From the viewpoint of semiconductor physics, hopefully you see me, an O dash and an O2 dash matrix is a defect electron or positive hole, i.e., a charge carrier that resides in and travels via the O2p, I'm not sure how to read this, dominated valence band. A peroxy represents a positive hole pair, PHP, electrically inactive and dormant. When the peroxy bond breaks, positive holes are released. These charge carriers are highly mobile and turn the mineral or rock momentarily into a P-type semiconductor. And that's according to King and Freund in 89. So a P-type conductor is, I believe that has to do with the pressure. Semiconductor that is able to, like a P wave, it's able to hold acoustic energy, physical energy, pressure. Acoustic energy is pressure. There's a physical thing that's moving, whereas electromagnetics can move independently of the it can move through a vacuum. It can move independently of a medium, whereas pressure waves, acoustic waves need a medium to move through. So when they're talking about a P-type pressure, they're talking about a physical something physically moving pressure. After it was observed that stress leading to dislocation movement and even acoustic waves, and that pressure waves is acoustic wave, are capable of activating PHPs, the idea arose that, can we do this? All right. The idea arose that when rocks are subjected to ever-increasing stress in an EQ-prone zone, earthquake-prone zone, like Italy, they will undergo plastic deformation and massive microfracturing. Each dislocation that moves and each micro crack that opens and closes explosively, emitting an acoustic wavelet, would activate positive holes. The expected large number of charge carriers would lead to large currents with predictable consequences amenable to remote sensing. All right. Let me think about this here for a sec so I can interpret it. Okay, let's see how well I can do on this. All right. After it was observed that stress leading to dislocation movement and even acoustic waves are capable of activating PHP, that's positive whole pairs, the idea arose that when rocks are subjected to ever-increasing stress in an EQ-prone region, they will undergo plastic deformation and massive microfracturing. All right, so they're putting rocks under stress. I've shown you in their, here, right? They put rocks under stress. Boom, boom. They're big vice. They clamp it. All right. So leading to dislocation event. And they're also looking at the data out in the field. All right. So dislocation event means like a fracture, break, and even acoustic waves, that's acoustic wave, pressure wave, sound wave, are capable of activating PHP, positive whole pairs. So a strong enough sound wave or pressure wave from an explosion, okay? The idea arose that when rocks are subjected to ever-increasing stress in an EQ-prone region, they will undergo plastic deformation and massive microfracturing. All right, so in areas that are always getting seismically hit, like Italy, Greece, like over there in that region, generally a lot of like Europe, it in that area, they will undergo plastic deformation and massive microfracturing. So the rocks are continually getting, cracked, massive microfracturing. So the rocks may not break so much as they do, they plastically deform. So they start contorting and getting this, how you get the shapes of the countryside, of the mountains that things look jagged, and because they deform in that way, and the massive micro fracturing with each dislocation moves, and each micro crack that closes and opens explosively, suddenly emits an acoustic wavelet. Emitting an acoustic wavelet would activate positive holes. So that continued fracturing will emit the positive holes. All right. And so it'll activate this circuit, the electric circuit. The expected large number of charge carriers would lead to large currents. Okay. I think that's pretty understandable. Like the atmospheric electromagnetics would lead to large currents, hopefully followed so far, with predictable consequences amenable to remote sensing. That means that they'll sense it over in the air at Kumiania. Right? Remote sensing, that means they'll pick it up at some station, the nearest station, however far that may be, and other stations as well. All right. So these large currents that are caused by all of this happening, the mechanism, they just gave you an overview of the mechanism of what's happening, what causes these, that will create the remote sensing that you can see over at Kumiania. Right? Changes in ground potential. All right. I've talked about this. I got to go through this. All right. So because the positive holes turn any rock momentarily into a pure p-type conductor. All right, and so I looked up p-type conductor. I will read you the definition. I need to, whether you want to know it or not, I got to read it to you. The charge carriers will propagate outward from their source volume.
So that means the source of the, the movement. Okay. Uh, when they intersect the surface of the Earth, the ground potential is expected to become highly positive. Freud and Lund in 2000, we in 2000. Two questions arise. One, what would be the consequences of a regional ground potential that trends toward highly positive values? Uh-oh. Two, how can the effects of an anomalously high positive ground potential be measured either on ground or from space? All right. So they're not answering these questions, but they're asking. Right. And so I get to read you what the P type semiconductor is. So two questions arise. All right. So the ground potential is expected to become highly positive. Okay, that's a problem. What would be the consequences of a regional ground potential that trends toward highly positive values? Well, something's going to give. Right? It's set. The electric circuit is set so that the ground, the return to ground, is at a zero. If you boost that up 5 volts, 10 volts, the difference between ground to what's working, it becomes smaller, and somewhere the system needs to accompany that. The system needs to accommodate that somewhere in there, and so it's not used to. The systems are not used to making up a 10 volts out of nowhere because the ground potential has risen. Okay, so I'm not going to go into all of what could happen, but I'll just say it's not going to be a happy thing. And I have mentioned this before, and I think I said it earlier in this video. A lot of these transformers and power stations that are bright blue, you can say whatever you want about some galactic forces or, in some alliance, and they're coming in with blue, gamma, blah, blah, blah. Nope. No. No, this. Right here. That's what they're telling you. What happens? The system can't. And especially, how many hold, please. System processing. Please wait. Okay, so we're on point. We are still on topic, and we're sort of on script with this. All right, so we're talking about the atmospheric electromagnetics from seismic. That's what this is. That's what this is doing. That's why I keep bringing this up and not the Tomsk any data. I don't think I've brought up any data from Tomsk when I've talked about this, because this is all entirely what we're talking about here. And so you see these anomalies, these electric signatures in there, right? This is the temperature. This is the decibel. I've mentioned this before. This is how to read this, right? The decibel, you see the point at this, all right? This is 100 here. This is 50. This is negative. This is negative numbers, okay? So these colors correspond to that, okay? That's what that's telling you. These are decibel. This is an electric signal. Even though it's measured, you see it here on hertz, hertz is going this way. Hertz is horizontal, okay? Hertz is not a this way. Decibel is this. This is the intensity. This is the loudness. This is how strong that signal is. This is what the decibel here, that's what that's measuring. The strength of the signal, and that's what these colors are, is the strength of the signal, right? So this is what they're talking about when I say remote sensing. We're talking about remote sensing. That's what this is. And these are the release from the seismic activity. The seismic. And how do I know that? Because it's telling you the geophone, seismic meter, channel 1, seismic meter. right here. This is your seismic meter right here. Okay, you see this? Seismic meter frequency range 1 to 30 hertz for the top spectrogram. It's right here. Right? Signals coming from geophone sensor, IO sensor, Netherlands, BB, blah, 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 blah. 40 decibel amplified with a very low noise amplifier. All right, so we're looking at that. We're remembering these graphs here. We have a number of different graphs that have different ranges of the power band, not the frequency, not the, yeah, I know it has the frequency number here, but that's not what this is measuring. This is the power of this, okay? The power, decibel. That's why this is way high up here. VLF, this is the power, okay? VLF monitoring for, all right. So, this is what we're talking about. Charge carriers will propagate outward from their source volume. So the source volume is what is causing the stress. So it's like you saw that in the vise, this guy here, the source volume, that's what this is here, the source volume. So it's showing you here source volume. It's a press. It's a giant industrial press that is creating a current at the end of the granite block based on the positive holes in all of this, right? So that, all right, so I'm not going to get more into the technical side of that. There's more I want to say, but it's going to get, this is, I think this is technical enough. And I don't think it needs to get more complicated than this, because I've addressed the basic parts of this to get you to understand what's, what the rising ground potential is. All right, now let me read one. P-type conductor. All right, semiconductor. All right, this was a woo article here. And that was me having fun. Ooh. All right. So extrinsic semiconductor. That's another name for it. An extrinsic. Actually, hold on. I'll give you the short version. All right. P-type semiconductor. Right. Come on, man. Right. P-type semiconductors. See also PMOS logic. All right. P-type semiconductors are created by doping an intrinsic semiconductor with an electron acceptor element during manufacture. The term P-type refers to the positive charge of a hole, as opposed to N-type semiconductors. P-type semiconductors have a larger hole concentration than electron concentration. In P-type semiconductors, holes are the majority carriers and electrons are the minority carriers. A common P-type dopant for silicon is boron or gallium. For P-type semiconductors, the Fermi level is below the intrinsic semiconductor and lies closer to the valence band than the conduction band. Okay, they're giving you a little visual aid there, so you can see it. Comparing the N-type with the P-type of semiconductor. Okay. I'll just read this to you, what this says. An extrinsic semiconductor is one that has been doped during manufacture of the semiconductor crystal. A trace element or chemical doping agent has been incorporated chemically into the crystal for the purpose of giving it different electrical properties than the pure semiconductor crystal, which is called an intrinsic semiconductor. An extrinsic semiconductor, it is these
foreign dopant atoms in the crystal lattice that mainly provide the charge carriers which carry electric current through the crystal. The doping agents used are of two types, resulting in two types of extrinsic conductor. An electron donor dopant is an atom which, when incorporated in the crystal, releases a mobile conduction electron into the crystal lattice. An extrinsic semiconductor, which has been doped with electron donor atoms, is called an N-type semiconductor because the majority of charge carriers in the crystal are negative electrons. An electron acceptor dopant is an atom which accepts an electron from the lattice, creating a vacancy where an electron should be called a hole, which can move through the crystal like a positively charged particle. Okay, so the holes in the semiconductors move like a charged particle. Okay, an extrinsic semiconductor which has been doped with electron acceptor atoms is called a p-type semiconductor because the majority of charge carriers in the crystal are positive holes. Okay, so I knew you needed to hear that and read that. Okay. And why is that relevant? It says because the positive holes turn any rock momentarily into a pure p-type semiconductor. Okay, mostly they're talking about igneous rock. Keep that in mind. All right. However, the stuff can move through sand as well. So rock itself can conduct a current, can conduct a charge. Okay. This is, again, the DC, lower DC circuit, is that the rocks are able to conduct a charge. Okay? All right. And I'm going to read this part here, 2.1, and then I'm going to be done with this. You know, it's over an hour, and then I'm going to play some music, and then I'm going to move on to the next thing, and we'll see where we're at with that. I'm going to keep this one to 2 hours or less if I can. All right. So atmospheric, and I'll just read this all the way. Come on, man. Come on. All right. All right. So atmospheric electromagnetic. Atmospheric electricity. If ULF EM is electromagnetic waves, impinge on electrically charged clouds, their transverse components should be attenuated exponentially because of the so-called anomalous skin effect. Electric currents induced by these waves could then be discharged by intercloud, cloud-to-cloud, or cloud-to-ground lightning. When the attendant field leads to a diverse discharge between the cloud layer and the upper atmosphere, phenomena like blue jets, sprites, and upward superbolts may occur. The normal ground potential varies between 0.1 to 100 volts per meter. But in the case of thunderstorms or in areas of an impending earthquake, it can rise to values up to 100 volts per meter. Such high ground fields influence the conductivity of the lower atmosphere. Gas emanation, including radon, release from the ground effect the aerosol content and causes the conductivity to increase up to 5-fold above the background level. And there's attribution to Alpernovic and Fedorov in 99. As a result, prior to an EQ, the vertical profiles of humidity, pressure, and temperature are changed, similar to the changes brought about by thunderstorms. Intense electrical field nears the ground that is normally seen as a result of meteorological events can generate clouds and ground hugging fogs. Interesting. Cloud to ground lightning strikes occur before the peak of the increased atmospheric conductivity in the air. Changes in the lower atmosphere ground conductivity are related to the migration of EM carriers from lower atmosphere to the ionosphere, and that's the F region. Okay, that's a lot to intake. Oops, I didn't realize it was covering over the text. Sorry. Okay, I sort of understand what I read there. But I think honestly, what I'm gonna do is just leave it on the screen, let you read it, and play some music. If you don't like that, put a comment down below, object to it, whatever. But it's midnight, just turned midnight, and so it's actually the 28th right now. And my brain is somewhat of mush. And I kind of just want to play some music right now. So let's transition. Hold please. I'm done reading this. So I mean, I literally am done reading this, and so I'll play this, and then let you read it through some music, and then when the music is done, I'll move on to the next thing, I think. Which may actually be me pausing it for the night. I am not sure. But let's play some music right now. I am sure of that. Oh, please. The mix, I don't know if I said this before, but the Aaron mix is 1/12/2020. So it's apparently 1st of December last year. So we're getting on about a year now. This was a pretty good mix, I think, overall. And I'm not sure if I played this mix before. I think I have, but I know I played some of the songs in here before. For what it's worth, I don't know. Those of you who are keeping track of things, keeping notes. On that, let me just play some music, groove some.
girls, get that cash. If it's 9 to 5 or shaking your girls, get that cash. If it's 9 to 5 or shaking your
Okay, let's bring it on home. Yeah. Shake it all you want, but just make sure at the end of the day you're ahead of the game. That's what you're saying there. Okay, so this is our next lesson, and I'm going to work to move through this as diligently as I can. All right. Special issue, recent progress in seismoelectromagnetics and physics and chemistry of the Earth. And this was published in 2006 in a publication called Physics and Chemistry of the Earth. And this is parts A, B, and C. Okay. Current and surface potential induced by stress-activated positive holes in igneous rocks. Where they are. And this is, the authors are Ahiro Takeuchi, Bobby W.S. Lau, and Freidemann Freund. Okay. All right. So I will we'll read through this, and just then I will I'll read through this and whatever. Get through the best I can. Oh, please. All right. In order to model seismo-electromagnetic phenomena, we focus on one specific defect as an alternative source of charge carriers in igneous rocks. These charge carriers are defect electrons in the O2 sublattice that are chemically equivalent to O dash in a matrix of an O2 dash and are known as positive holes, p-holes. They are activated from peroxy defects, and they're showing you O3X dash OO dash XO, and then you can replace the X for silicone or alumina, etc., etc. And again, they're talking about the crust of the planet. And as I've said this before, there is a lot of oxygen that is locked up in the crust of the planet. In fact, little known fact, there is more oxygen that is locked up in the crust of the planet than there is oxygen in the sky. Little known fact, but it is as oxides, it has O3, different forms of oxygen, but it's there. Stressed igneous rocks behave like p-type semiconductors. Okay, we read through that mass of words of what a p-type semiconductor is. In order to examine the contributions of p-holes to seismic electromagnetic phenomena, we conducted 2 series of uniaxial loading tests using air-dry tiles of several types of rock. And so they used granite, anorthosite, gabbro, limestone, and marble, and glass. We observed that the igneous rock tiles were centrally loading generated a positive current carried by holes and flowing from the central stressed volume through the surrounding unstressed volume to the edges of the tile, and 2, a negative current carried by electrons and flowing from the central stressed volume into the load piston. That's that big, huge industrial sized press that I had showed you. They call it the source volume. And so that's what the load pistons. All right. In addition, a positive potential appeared on the surface of the unstressed portion of the igneous rock tiles. On the other hand, limestone containing small amounts of silicate grains generated lower currents. Marble containing no silica grains and glass generated much lower and no currents, respectively. So glass, if you push it, doesn't have a current. That's interesting. All right. However, the other, was it glass? A marble. Marble containing no silicate grains and glass generated much lower and no currents, respectively. All right. The current generated per 1 meter squared or cube, 1 meter cube of stressed volume at a rapid loading up to 50 megapascals, that's MPa, added a 10 to the negative 6th amp to the current. Anorthosite and gabbro showed 10 to 50 times higher currents, and limestone and marble showed 1/10 to 100th times. The vertical electrical field during stress change from 50 megapascals to 60 megapascals was on the order of 10 to the second volts per meter. We propose that when stresses and strain change at our, what does it say? We propose that when stresses and strain change at or around, I got you, a fault zone before and during an earthquake, similar currents and electric fields will be generated in and on the grounds, respectively. Such currents and fields will be accompanied by changes in the conductivity of the rocks and may lead to abnormal electromagnetic fields and emissions to ionospheric perturbation. Are you getting all of that? That's a lot. All right. So a lot of this is not new. This isn't necessarily new, but we're talking about, the stresses that they're putting. A Pascal
Pascal is he was one of the scientists, but he's force. I think his is a use of force. Torque is one of those. Pascal is a different. I think it's a compressing force. I'm not sure, but it's a use of a type of measurement of force. In on my bicycle, uh, um, oh, it's Newton meters. Never mind. But I know that pascals are a unit of measure. I'll have to find out more of that, but I'm pretty sure that's what that is. But I may be, I'll check into this to make sure I'm saying that the right thing. M is usually mega though, and that's a mega is 1,000. All right, so the basic nuts and bolts of this is that they're saying that by stressing it a certain amount, it resulted in a charge at the end of it. All right. And so what's interesting about this to me, what I really like about this is that they're testing the granite, anorthosite, gabbro, limestone, marble, and glass, right? So these are all interesting subjects that they're testing, and I'm finding this interesting because these are all different materials that I'm familiar with, that I work with. I work with limestone, I work with granite, and this is all fascinating to me. So I picked some pictures out of my my camera. I'll just share them real quick. What my interest in granite and marble is. This is my personal life here. This is what I do. This is downtown in Providence, and what you're looking at is the tree right there in the front of this, in the middle of the asphalt and the concrete. That's a tree that's growing, and surrounding it at the base is a bunch of rocks that I have collected from around town. Now it probably looks less organized there than it is. I fashioned it sort of into a rock garden, and had some alpine type plants growing in there. Um, but I've since reconfigured that box. And one of the things you're looking at here in the front, this is granite. This is actually red granite. And specifically, it is westerly granite. And red in granite comes from iron content, ferrite, right? Iron is what gives it the pink or the red content. And that's also one of the things that helps give Adobe a red color. All right, so this is what I was looking at, granite. This is granite here. This is bricks, a lot of different kind of rocks. So I work with, these are all, I have to say, bits and pieces of the town I've collected as it's falling apart around us, and the roads and wherever. I've collected bits and pieces of the rocks, and this is another granite here that you can see. This is made of different pieces, and again, I've gone in and changed this one around, but these are oh, and you can still see there's a little snow there. So these are little flower boxes. Essentially, they have trees growing in them. They cut the sidewalk to, put a place for trees to grow, and then basically at the base of the tree, sometimes there's nothing there. A lot of times, more often there's nothing growing there. But I utilized that space, so I have things growing. And at each one of the bases of the trees, I have these kind of boxes. And this one isn't the best example, but such as it is. Oh, hold on. But again, it's bits and pieces of the town. And there you see a better view of it, and it looks a little more organized looking at it from this way. But I'm not buying the material. So as it becomes available around me, and I have to pick it up from wherever I've found it, and that's an investment in my time. But you can see the different type of rocks, different type of granite, all types of different material that's in there.
Oh, wrong one. All right, so it's another one. This is a little different box, but you see the little violets are coming in. This was early in the year, probably around April, I think, would have been April, May. From March, it says March 25th, apparently. You see the violets coming in, the different rocks, bricks that I have. And that's, I think, the same box, but on the other side of it, you see I have some different things growing in there. But this one is one of the ones I'm really happy with because it I was able to use the same similar type of material all the way around it. So these are obviously daffodils coming in early. Oh, the broken stool from the bar behind me. So I can see the different ground cover that's coming in, and I just wanted to get some pictures of it. So there's one of the other ones. I have this. This is that the pink granite. This is the westerly granite that I got local. These are bricks. So the building material. So these are, like I said, these are little boxes that I built around the trees downtown, the middle of the city. And I have little things growing in them. But these are actually memorial boxes for people who passed on. Friends of ours at the club who passed on. It's made my little water bucket, and you can see I'm using bricks and all kinds of other unruly stuff, and you see the other ones that I've been working on. And that's me. Hey, guy. So this is one of the jobs that I do. This is my daytime job, the one that puts food on my plate. Basically puts a roof over my head. This is the one. So these are big blocks. I didn't move those, but these are big stones, and those are hosta that I'm planting. All right. All right. So this is my work. All right. So we get the granites. My boss has a contract with the granite countertop place. So they have granite, they have marble, big, huge slabs of marble and granite and all kinds of amazing stuff that's all very expensive. And so when she renovates a house, she puts granite and marble on the countertops and whatever. So we go at a certain point to the dumpsters, and we go the dumpster for the marble, and I dive in there. Sometimes I don't have to dive in, it's so full, but I pull out pieces. And so these are like these thin. You see how thin these are? Marble. These are like edging pieces. And so they were in the dumpster. I saw them and I was like, oh, fuck, I got to get those. So you see there's a thin piece of marble right there. Then there, a little thicker. Then there's a thin, then there's a wider piece, and then there's a little thicker one again. And so this provides an edging. And so I did this out of all the stuff I got in the dumpster, and I put it up. And this took hours and hours, But I saw the vision. I had the vision. I didn't know what I was going to use it for, but I knew it would be useful for something. And son of a gun. So you see the little, I did all this. I put originally all the stonework. She had someone that had put in the edging, the plastic edging piece, and someone that put the plastic edging piece there as well. All right, so I didn't do that. But this all, instead of it being the broken stone, this was all just gravel. And the little tiny stone, you can see the little tiny stone. There's one of the little tiny stone there. All right, so I kind of went through, got all of the stone out, moved it to the side, and then as I had dug in, I placed all of the broken granite and broken marble and all of that in there, the big pieces. You see some of these are rather large. That one right there is like 3 feet wide, probably about 3.5 feet wide by 18, maybe 20 inches, and it's that thick. It's thick. It's countertop thickness, So I pulled all of those on my bike. I think it's important to mention all of those. They were at the boss's house about a quarter mile away. They all got trekked over on my bike, my bicycle, all of them. And so that's why I had to take pieces that weren't that big. But yeah, all of that. I on in milk crates. Mm. So you can see the edging there, you know, a little better view. And so I just sized everything up, got it all fit in there, you know, put an edging piece in there, laid all these out, you know, made a little mosaic of it. And I had fun, relative fun. One of the more fun things I've done on the job, right? I can see there's a little bit better view of the middle of it, and the stone was already there. I moved the stone out, sifted through it, and I placed those. All of these, uh, the paver is the legitimate stone, not the pea stone, not the gravel, but the legitimate stone. I moved those. There's more of that. You see the different pieces of granite and marble. I fished all of those. I fished all of those out of the dumpster, all of them. And there's that round piece. I didn't know what I was going to use that for, but I was like, I'm going to take that. And so it's like a perfect place for it. Oh, and I found that in the dumpster as well. It looked like an eagle. And I got to somehow find a head or somehow figure out a head out of wood, I think. Get something from a tree. I'll figure it out. But I was like, oh, I grabbed that. And just the way you can't really tell there, but the way it shines in the light, it's like, ooh. The day we got them, the day we went to get this pile here, the last pile out of the dumpster, it was bright and shiny. It was like I think it was like 1 in the afternoon, you know, or 11, somewhere between 11, the midday, or somewhere between 11 and 1. And so I had a chance to see everything shining in the sun. It was like, oh my God, this is amazing. So what we're looking at here this is my day job. Okay. You know, this is the edging. This is legitimate landscaping. So this is edging right here. All of that. That's edging. This was over a year ago because this was before the COVID thing. We're talking about 2 years now, I think. We're getting on 2 years, where the boss and I had put up the non-standard application for these pieces of marble and granite as edging for the walkway. You can see the stone, the little tiny stone dust, they call that, for the underlay, for the blocks. And these over here on the left, you just barely see them. These are the actual pavers that make up the walkway. So on the left-hand side is the edging for the walkway. So behind this, these pieces here that I've been working on, all of this on the right-hand side, or the right-hand side of it, okay. This right here, this is all the cribbing material. This is going to go behind, maybe not these square ones here, you know, maybe not that one, maybe not this one here. But these long pieces, all these long ones, you can see they'll go right behind this. You can see a little bit. You get the basic idea. These are support pieces behind the edging. Okay, so I had to go into the dumpster, and actually I didn't have to get up into the dumpster this time, but I could reach in, you know, but I had to, you know, like literally kind of get into the dumpster and to pull these pieces out, each of them. I had to look at them and kind of determine. And I also got some of the granite and the marble there for other reasons, like for downtown, where I showed you I plant the planters outside of my former work on Snow Street. And so you see, this was this right here, this was a picture of this was the very first. I had no idea what I was doing here. I had to ask my guides. Like, this is non-standard. I can't tell you how out of the ordinary this is. If you haven't done landscaping, you might think, oh yeah, this is shit you would normally do. No, it's not. This is not shit you would normally do. Trust me.
people get a lot of money for doing this because it's non-standard. It's a non-standard application of non-standard use of materials. It's like a double whammy. So I got to be super creative. I had to ask my guides, how the hell do I do this? So they gave me a lot of principles of how to do this. And so you can see behind there, it's starting to kind of come loose and come loose. So I have to, this was like the prototype, my kind of working model of how to figure everything out. So now that I got everything kind of figured out, I have to go back in here and redo all of this with longer pieces. You can see how short these ones are, like chippy. So I got to replace all of these with longer pieces. All right. And that's the general idea. So you can see the cribbing for it. This takes hours to do this. It's a long process to do this because, again, this is a non-standard application of non-standard material. And if you don't think that that's going to take a lot of time, go ask your local craftsman, go ask your local journeyman, go ask your local tradesman what non-standard application of non-standard materials means. And they'll look at you when they process what that means, and they'll say, put their hand out and write, just give me an empty checkbook, because it's going to take whatever it takes to do that. When you have to invent stuff on the spot and create, there's a term we like using here in Providence. It's called interpretive engineering. There's like scientific engineering that you do, that you run numbers and there's tests, and there is that. There's, scientific engineering, but then there's interpretive engineering. Kind of like you have interpretive dance. This is kind of on the fly. This is engineering on the fly for things that are falling, literally falling around you, that you want to prevent from falling and killing someone, or taking out someone's car. Seat of the pants interpretive engineering. That's sort of what it boils down to. So that's what this is interpretive engineering for non-standard application of non-standard material. And so this is no, that's a job. It's a job. This is a job. But you see the material that I'm using. Anyway, the point is the material that I'm using. All right. And so that's more of it. This is close-up. It's very beautiful material. And some of this is actually, I will tell you, some of this is natural stone and some of this is man-made, a type of ceramic. Okay. See the one here that's uniform in color? Okay, that's not marble. That's a ceramic. That is a very hard rock that has been cooked. They take basically dust from they take dust from other processes. They grind it up. They adhere it. There's a bonding agent, chemical bonding agent, and then they heat it. They heat the fuck out of it, basically. So these ones here that are all kind of uniform in color, right? They make perfect right angles. This one here, the uniform color one, this one here, this one, that one. And I know these because I've touched them. I know these. So this one here, a lot of these, most of this. Now, you can see this one here. It's a variegated color. That one, I'm pretty sure that one's a natural one. All right, so all these ones variegated that have veins, all veiny, this one here, that would be a type of, that's a type of granite, right? You start getting into an area between granite and marble. The difference between granite and marble is granite is igneous. It was caused by, it's volcanic, it's heat. Marble is soft. Marble is metamorphic, or it's basically sedimentary. So it's just caused by the squishing, pressure, essentially. So granite is going to be a lot harder because it was heated. So there's a good number of this. Granite will have more uniform. Look at this. See, this one here has more uniform grain.
that tends to be more of a granite rather than marble, which has, it's again, it's marble is more of a metamorphic or sedimentary. All right. Metamorphic is a cross between either sedimentary and igneous, sort of has pigments and, grog of different type of things in it. So the more marbling and variation of color and all this wild, texture, you start getting into marble instead of a granite. Right? I think that's important for a person to know if you're interested in rocks and stones and all of this, the difference between marble and granite. Granite is formed at a higher temperature. Gabbro, we had mentioned in the thing, gabbro is a type of volcanic igneous rock. And so the finer grain tends to be one that's been heated. So the more organic type stuff that you have gets burned off. The sedimentary stuff gets burned off. Right? And so you see in the background the other different types of really pretty rocks. So this is the boss's number one kind of flagship property, and it's more of the edging. I help put that up, so we have to support behind it. And you can kind of see how some of them are, they're losing this. This particular one should be right up against the cement. See right there, there's that gap there. It should be right up against the cement. And you see some of them are kind of moving and shifting. It's supposed to have a jagged top, but it's not supposed to be weaving in and out like that. And I kind of told the boss, well, it doesn't look that bad if it's weaving in and out. She says basically, I don't want it, And I said, well, it's going to take you a while to get everything kind of, secured on this, because this is, again, non-standard application of non-standard materials. Okay, and so this is now the new how I'm lining things up. Before this is part of this is in the process. This is me putting this in the process. Before I kind of start work, I lay everything out, so I'm kind of sizing all the pieces out to get the distance, the linear distance lined up so that everything, kind of like I have all the materials lined up. That's what I'm kind of showing here. All right. Oh, I think that's about it. All right. So the show's over for right now. All right. So granite, anthracite, gabbro, limestone, marble, and glass. All right. So these are all materials that I work with. As you can see. Right? Just gave you the little the run through. So it's some way or another, these are all materials that I work with. We observed that the igneous rock tiles under centrally loading under central. This has been translated, by the way. This is why it's kind of a little bit rugged in the way things are, the way the words are fitting together. We observed that the igneous rock tiles under centrally loading generated a positive current carried by holes and flowing from the central stressed volume through the surrounding unstressed volume to the edges of the tiles, and a negative current. All right. There's a lot of technical stuff here, but basically, let me just say this. All right. So I gave you an example, an illustration of the grain that you can see, and how the really fine grain, that ceramic, basically the all white material, very high temperature. It's like 3,800 degrees or something Fahrenheit. It's like very high temperature. By extension, granite itself starts melting at 2,800 or something, 28, 20. I think it starts getting gooey at 26 and it melts at 2,800. All right. So these are really super high temperatures that it burns a lot of the metamorphic and the sedimentary stuff into a powder, essentially. And then they basically glue the powder together, and that's how they get the industrial ceramic that they use as the man-made
porcelain, essentially, man-made ceramic. So the igneous rock is what burns at that it's a high temperature, burns at a high temperature. All right. So its grains are finer. It's important to understand they're closer together, they're finer, they're more uniform than marble. Okay. So when they're doing these tests, they talk about marble and glass are not good charge conductors, charge carriers. Okay. It's because the marble is softer and the grains are not all uniformly sized and shaped and aligned. Okay, that's the difference. One of the differences between igneous, between the granite and the gabbro and marble, and there's other different type of marbles. Sandstone is a compression type rock. So that's what they're telling you here, and the different types of stressed and unstressed, and the different types of rocks. Some are going to be better charge carriers than others, and this is why. And so you can knowing that why and how, the difference between the different types of rocks is in the grain sizes and the alignments and all of that. On the other hand, limestone containing small amounts of silicate grains generated lower currents. Okay? So the silicate grains are one of the things in there that are causing that the charge carrier. All right? The current generated per 1 cubic meter of stressed volume at a rapid loading up to 50 megapascals was on the order of 10 to the negative 9th, 10 to the negative 5th A for granite. Anthracite and orthosite and gabbro showed 10 to 50 times higher currents. Limestone and marble showed 1/10 to 100th times. That's fractions of it. All right. So limestone is relatively soft. Marble is relatively soft. Okay. So they're showing you the difference between the igneous and the sedimentary rocks. All right. So this is all relatively, a lot of this is what we've gone over before. The new material here is talking about the different material based on the grains of it. They're giving you an actual amount of the charge that's coming off of the material. Okay, so this is kind of new to get an actual value based on the type of material. Okay. All right, seismo-electromagnetic phenomena such as earth currents and conductivity changes, abnormal electric fields and emissions, and ionospheric perturbances have been of interest to Earth and planetary scientists and engineers. There's a big long list of them. The effects point to telluric currents. To explain such currents, a variety of possible sources have been proposed. And these are a list of interesting possible sources as effects related to electroseismicity. Piezoelectric potentials of quartz, streaming potentials of moving groundwater, emanation of special gases, tribologic electromagnetics, and moving dislocations. Okay, these are all interesting theories. In contrast, we have identified an alternate type of electric charge carriers that may be suited to account for even very large telluric currents. In the following, we briefly review the source and nature of these charge carriers. In the process of igneous rock formation that begins with the crystallization
in the process of igneous rock formation that begins with a crystallization from H2O laden magmas, small amounts of water are structurally incorporated in the materials, even into those that are normally considered anhydrous. The mode of incorporation includes the formation of hydroxyl, O3X-OH, with X equal silicone or alumina, etc. During cooling, hydroxyl pairs undergo an electronic rearrangement that leads to the formation of peroxy links, O3X-OO-X03, figure 1a. These links appear to be ubiquitous in all igneous and most high-grade metamorphic rocks. When such rocks are stressed, the peroxy links break, resulting momentarily in the formation of two non-binding oxygens that have only have only 7 valence electrons instead of the usual 8. These oxygens can be viewed as O negative, or with a 1 minus. But the more accurate representation is that of a missing electron, a hole in a matrix that consists of O2 negative. When an electron from a neighboring O2 negative jumps into the O negative to fill the hole, the neighboring O2 turns into an O negative. With this new O negative, a positively charged site has moved by 1 unit distance to the O2 negative sublattice. A p-hole, that's the positive hole, moving process can itself between, right? The p-hole moving process can repeat itself between O2 and more O negative and O2 negative further out, allowing the O negative to move like a defect electron or hole in conventional p-type semiconductor. We call this O negative a positive hole p-hole. Likewise, we call the peroxy link a positive pair hole PHP. The PHPs represent a dormant state of the p-holes. The p-holes, positive holes, can be achieved by stress, which leads to dissociation of the PHPs. When this happens, the p-holes can spread out of the stressed volume because they can propagate through the valence band using the O2p dominated upper energy levels of the valence band by jumping from O2 negative to O2 negative. They can cross grain boundaries in thick layers of igneous rock until they reach the surface. Thus, by placing igneous and high-grade metamorphic rocks under stress, we can produce currents of positive charge carriers that flow through these rocks, although these rocks are usually good insulators. Details on p-holes and PHPs are given in Freund 2003. All right. So that's what, this is interesting to note. They can cross grain boundaries and thick layers of igneous rocks until they reach the surface. So, this is how electronic signals can pass through a rock. This is how rocks can be conductive, is through pressure, through a seismic event on one side of the rock, transmitting the holes through the material. And it says that even under thick layers of igneous rock, it can thick layers, right? I mean, that's through, I don't know how much, but it can transmit. If it's all igneous and they're packed pretty tightly together, it can transmit those for probably miles. The spreading of p-holes through unstressed igneous rocks leads to 2 potentially important predictions. 1, when a portion of a rock is subjected to stress, the electrical conductivity in the unstressed portion of the rock should increase. And two, stressing produces self-generated currents that flow out of the stressed volume. In section 2, to validate prediction 1, we pressed a central portion of rock tiles and measured the currents through the rock by applying, and there's the tiles, by applying DC voltage across the tiles. In section 3, to validate prediction 2, we used essentially the same experimental setup but did not apply any external voltage. Instead, we measured the self-generated currents and surface potentials. In section 4, we discussed the consequences of our findings with respect to the behavior of P-holes in the Earth's crust and with respect to seismo-electromagnetic phenomena. All right, so I am done reading this for now. This would probably be an interesting thing to read of itself, but I need to kind of, it's late, it's 1 o'clock in the morning, and this is way too much to read more on. 7, yeah, there we go, 7 pages, 8 pages including the references. All right, so they give you some interesting pictures to look at here. Okay, this is 2 hours and 6 minutes. It's definitely time to end this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to end this with some music and this interesting diagram here, just because it's, you know, an interesting diagram. I don't know if you can see, but I'm kind of, you know, expand it out so you can see it a little better. But this is basically what we're talking about here. You know, there's a lot of words I need a picture, and this is the best picture I can get. So I'm gonna play some music here in a second. I'm gonna get over there first. So I'm gonna play some music, and we're gonna end at this. Play maybe 8 minutes of music, 8 to 10 minutes. I don't know. It's a long video, maybe 10 minutes. Cigarette length break. Cigarette break length. There we go. Cigarette break length. All right. Music, Mr. DJ. Okay.
see all the ladies wanna get with me. Those of you who don't know my name, this is for you. You can check the game. Came to you like a deja vu. It's live at the fever with me and the crew in the ice room with me and my boo. In a little bit of that boom, boom, boom. Famous DJs and fly MCs about to rock you to your knees. Talk about on the count of three, everybody freeze. 1, 2, 3, freeze. Bring your body a little closer. It's getting hot in the party. Got that sweat on your body.
It's hotter than fire every time we touch, and temperature's higher. You got me burning up than fire. I got that fever, just because we feel it. You give me fever, new intelligence on deeper. Come on, y'all.
Yo, when you talk about hip hop, you talking about the cats on top, back on the block. Must have forgot, so that's right. It's the fever. Did it make you a believer? Don't ever deceive you. I'm the BS preacher. So drink up. I'll meet you on the floor, then let's link up in the red cup. Cross fever. Did it make you a believer? Don't ever deceive you. I'm the BS preacher. So drink up. I'll meet you on the floor, then let's link up in the red cup. Cross life. Need to be in your life because they bringing the music and they bringing it right. Cross fever. Did it make you a believer?
Okay, I'm going to end this in about a minute, less than a minute. So, have a good rest of your night. Thank you all for being here.
Be in your life because they bringing the music and they bringing it right. Cross fever, did it make you a believer? Don't ever deceive you. I'm the BS preacher.